everyone, and welcome to the Des Moines Greater Partnership's Untapped Talent event. My name is Amber Ramirez, and I am the Central Iowa Works Director at the United Way of Central Iowa. And Central Iowa Works is a workforce intermediary, so we work with employers in our community to fill hard-to-fill positions, and we also work with people in our community that could fill those positions if they had either the right training or the right connections. And why the United Way got involved with the Greater Des Moines Inclusion Council is one reason is within this workforce shortage, we're really able to emphasize the need for workers in our community and the need for being inclusive. Right now, about 3.3% of individuals are on unemployment. On the other side of that, 67% of individuals are in the labor participation rate. So that leaves this other 30%. And who's in that 30%? This includes retired people, it can include stay-at-home parents, it can include youth, but it also includes this untapped talent pool. And that's why it's so important for us to have these discussions and talk about what do we need to do to reach this untapped talent. And today's discussion is around returning citizens. And in many cases, if a returning citizen is not working, it may be because they heard no one too many times and have given up looking in the main employment way of going. So today's focus will be around returning citizens, and we have a panel here. This panel consists of 3 professionals who happen to have criminal records, but who are working and living very successful lives and are a wonderful example for all. And so we're going to get feedback from them both on what helped them to be successful, but also barriers that were in the way that we should work on as a community. So we're going to start with introductions, and I'd ask each of you to take 5-10 minutes or so and introduce yourself, where you're working, and your employment journey. How did you get where you are after having a criminal record? So Felicia, let's start with you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Felicia. I work for Lutheran at UnityPoint, well, UnityPoint for Health, and I am an inpatient mental health and substance abuse therapist. I'm a mother of 5, and I just want to say I took interest in this topic just because formerly, of course, I was incarcerated at the Women's Correctional Facility. And also, I just want to shed light on the policies and the importance of hiring individuals who have a background. I mean, it's just needed. And I don't know, like for me, I would say that I didn't have a lot of barriers finding employment, but I think that was due to some other resources that I had in the community in regards to family and things of that nature. Now, I'm not saying that it's not out there, because it is. My journey when I came home, I went to the Iowa, the women's facility, and like I said, the hustle was real hard. I had to start out working at the bottom. I worked as a waitress, and I had a really good friend who knew how to, had her own beauty salon. And she gave me that opportunity to do hair, wash hair. So I started at the bottom and worked my way up. But I will say, prior to being incarcerated, I had started some of my education. I had my CNA. I also almost finished my associate's degree. So I think that kind of opened the door for me. And also my husband, he worked for Urban Dreams. And so when I needed an intern, that is what kind of really opened the door for me. Yeah, so there you go. LaShawn.
Felicia. LaShawn, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is LaShawn Robinson. I have two jobs. I am a home health care worker, and I also work down in the Broadlawns cafeteria. So there's that. But I've had a few jobs over the years. I'm like Felicia. I am a felon. I did 7.5 years at the at Mitchellville. Came home, did about 2 or 3 months at the women's facility. And my first job was at Arby's making minimum wage. And um, I knew that that was not, that wasn't going to work. So I stayed there, but I just kept, working different jobs, just getting the feel of different. I had just came home, like my literally first job. In prison, you work, you do a couple things here and there, but like for real, it gets real when you get home. There's many opportunities, and I've learned so much. I've been a manager at Hy-Vee. I've been um like head trainers at most of my jobs. I just work. I'm a very, very hard worker, very focused. Once I get in there, I'm in there. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy helping people. So those are primarily the jobs I tend to pick where I can help people. I don't care if it's finding a box of cereal in Hy-Vee or seating people at the restaurant. I've been a hostess at Baker Square for a few years. So I've done a few things. What I will say is there's certain jobs I know I cannot apply for. Um, and like, I can't be a bank teller at the bank. They're going to be like, even though I've been home 17 years, they're still going to be like, that, because I'm assuming I can't be bonded. And I know that's, one of the issues. So things like that, I think these companies need to look at policy wise is, like people do change. People do change. And me and Felicia and Mr. Dennis are prime examples of that. Because I'm not sure how long Mr. Dennis has been home. And Felicia, I know you was a little bit after me, but we have changed. We are, we're successes. We're
LaShawn,
not statistic.
I was just looking at like how long have I been home?
Mm-hmm.
I've been home for 13 years, but I've been off paper for 10 years. And there's a freedom in that.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
freedom in that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Thank you,
But yeah, I
Kevin.
think as far as like job wise, like these companies, some of them need to go and kind of update their policies and things about certain crimes or whatever. Because again, you do have repeated offenders. Obviously, we've seen that, being incarcerated. But you do have the people like us that are not repeated offenders. So I feel like after I've been home 10 years, well, 17, but if I've been home 10 years, why can't I be a bank teller? That crime's definitely not, that's not who I am anymore. So why can't I do that? Why are you putting that barrier, in front of me? So.
Thanks, LaShawn. Dennis, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, I want to thank y'all for attending this forum or conference or whatever you want to call it. And I want to thank these young ladies who are on the panel with me because it's important for you guys to see what success looks like. I'm going to take you guys on my journey. Okay, so I served 25 years in various prisons in Iowa. Most of the time was done in Fort Madison. I did over 17 and a half years in some form of segregation. So I was released almost 10 years ago. So June 6th, I will be out 10 years. And I want you guys to understand what opportunity really looks like. I'm the poster child for opportunity. I started out my working career at A+, and I had to catch 2 buses from Fort Moines and they would get me as far as Aurora in East 14. Then I would have to ride my bike all the way out to Ankeny, where I had to kick a shovel for 8 to 10 hours a day, get on that bike and ride back. Once I got back to the Fort Des Moines facility, I took a shower and I went over to the cafeteria and I washed dishes so it would offset my rent. Anyway, it was seasonal work, so I got laid off in the winter months, and I went to Urban Dreams. And when I went down to Urban Dreams, Wayne Ford gave me my first opportunity. And what's so funny is when I first came to him, he told me he was going through his own problems, that he couldn't hire me at that particular time. But I came back a week later, and he called me back to his office, and he apologized to me. And he said, I don't care what I'm going through, you know, what you've been through for that 25 years, you deserve a chance. And that's where I got my first chance. He started giving me, first it started out, I was just doing grub work around the building. And then he had some money from the ag department, and he let me create Growing Through Gardens, a program that Felicia's son went through it's the first program that I actually ran. And from there, I got an opportunity, a guy seen me on a panel, and I got an opportunity to lobby up at the Capitol for juvenile justice issues for Justice Reform Consortium. I did that for a year, and then I came back and I was a resource specialist for Gateway to College. So the Gateway to College program that they have here with DMAC wasn't doing so well. And so they involved Urban Dreams, and they used me as a pass-through. And we were able to turn that program around. And subsequently, I got the job that I got today, which is I'm the teaching tech program coordinator for Broadlawns Hospital. And this program is a program that helps people with barriers to employment get jobs in the healthcare field. And not only jobs, I've been able to I got 3 young men right now who are in med school. One of them should be doing his white coat ceremony sometime this summer. So, I mean, I'm really proud about what we're doing here at Broadlawns as far as helping people with barriers to get back on that track to success.
Well, thank you all for that. So in all of your introductions, I heard all of you say that you didn't really have any barriers along the way. But then I heard all of you say, talk about all the hustle and how you started at the beginning and you really worked your way up. And even though you had the education, you worked in a different area, and also the supportive people that were around you and the difference that made. So were there specific points along your journey when you needed more support than others? Or is there a specific time you want to talk about? Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, so let me clear something. I never said there was no barriers. There were plenty of barriers. I mean the transportation.
We did make it look easy. We did make it sound easy though.
Transportation was a barrier. I rode a bike. It didn't dawn on me till a year after I had left A+ out in Ankeny that 3 people had got killed riding bikes on the next to the highways. But I was unaware of that. I just know that I was on a mission and I had to get this done. I had aftercare that I had to do. So my counselor set up aftercare. Now you got to understand, I'm away out in Ankeny. They set up aftercare at like 5 o'clock on a Thursday, and
what's aftercare, Dennis? What's aftercare?
Aftercare is where they recommend some kind of treatment that you do after your incarceration. So what they did is they set it up for like 4 o'clock. I'm out in Ankeny, and every Thursday I got to be in this group counseling, you know, and that was a challenge. But because of the employers that I had, they were very accommodating, you know. I had my license, so I was able to drive the truck, so they would allow me to take that hour off and go to work. So it wasn't that there wasn't barriers that were placed here. I mean, having a place to stay. I always tell people that transportation, housing, and getting your driver's license is probably 3 of the most hardest things that we have to do, especially if you have kids and you're on you have child support, so they pull your license. They don't allow you to have license. And if you get in this reinstatement program, The reinstatement program, if you miss a payment for any reason, you know, they kick you out of the program. So now that's why we have so many people driving around without license right now and perpetuating the real.
Can I say this too? Housing, I won't say housing was a problem for me, but I know that when I was on parole, I moved without telling my PO. And she instantly told me, I will revoke your parole because you moved without telling me. So that was like, oh my gosh, that was like a big eye opener for me. So you're right. Like, you can't just get up and just move when you want to. You have to inform them about everything. If you're going to change a job, you have to inform them.
Yeah. So even though you're out of prison, you're not out of prison. That's you're in a softer prison.
I got to tell you guys, I lived in an attic like Helen Keller for 3 years when I first got out, because that's the only place that would accept me with my background, because I have a violent crime. So
me too. All three of us do. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's tricky. I think the thing that shocked me the most is and this was years later, but I was able to get on Section 8. I'm not on it now, but I was some years ago. And I'm thinking, okay, my thing is the worst I could say is no. So I applied and I got accepted, but I was thrown back. But then when I thought about the rules and regulations, it was drugs and theft. Well, mine is a robbery. So, you know, like where, like what? I mean, I was grateful. It helped out, but it was just weird how like I have a whole robbery, but if I'd have been a drug dealer or stole something from the store, I can't get on the specific program. But I got a whole robbery. Like that's way worse than both of those put together. So things like that are just and jobs are like that too. You can have whatever, but if you got a theft or forgery or any of those things, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I would say though too, like for me, like all the jobs that I had, they never did a background. Shocking.
I don't know if mine did.
Well, I know for me, and it didn't happen. And I have a violent crime. Right. And it's willful injury. I hurt someone. But I work with people. Spiritually, I will just say that door opened for me because spiritually. Now, I ain't gonna get all high and mighty, but I do believe that my higher power opened that door for me. But it never happened until I actually came over to UnityPoint. And my boss, she wanted to hire me when I was doing my intern, and she hadn't known about it because first I initially did my intern through POW. And I don't remember if they did or didn't, but at any rate, when I got hired on as a mental health therapist, they did that. And I had to tell her, I told her before, I said, hey, I was very scared too, because I really wanted this job and I love working with people. It was just one incident that happened that changed my life forever. And when I told her, she said, that's okay. And I was like, really? She said, no, because what you're going to do is you're going to fill out these forms and you're going to show them what you've done. And I filled out the forms and I had to fill out the forms for the DHS and all of that. And I think I've done that one other time. I think, I can't remember. But anyway, I did it for the DHS. They approved it. There's no child abuse or anything on my background. And I've been here ever since. And it has been a great experience. But there too, there's barriers. If you did have a crime against an elder or a child, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be sitting here. I truly believe that. And I get that. But yeah, so I did have to apply through DHS to get approved. And the background did take a long time, but I kind of was already in the door a little bit. So the wait wasn't a problem. But anyway, go ahead.
So I've heard a couple of different accommodations that were made. So Dennis, you talked about how in one of your first roles, they made the accommodation so that you could get to an appointment on Thursday afternoons. And Felicia, you talked about how when there was a background check, the employer helped you like know what the process was and what you needed to do and encouraged you through the process so that you didn't self-select out before you even started. Are there any other accommodations like that have happened throughout the years that have been helpful either to you or ones that you as an employer have provided for someone else?
Because I work in the healthcare field too, I've had to provide services for a lot of people. And I had to pretty much give people a roadmap to how to get into these positions. So certain things that you have to do. And one of the things you young ladies are not giving yourself credit for is your track record. One of the biggest things that I tell people is, you got to rehabilitate your reputation, because when you come out, you got this stigma of what you did. So now it's a constant fight of getting that experience behind you and getting those years behind you. When I talk to young kids, I tell them, your work history is going to be way more important than what you put on that application, because your work history tells people how reliable you are. And that's what we have done over years to get in these positions. People accommodate you after you have proven that you're reliable, you're going to show up on time, you're going to do the work. And that is the major things that give you more and more opportunity. And like Felicia said, I believe that there's a blessing in doing hard work. I mean, if you're a hard worker, you just tend to get rewarded for it.
Yeah.
And if people understand that coming out, that they have to give themselves a chance. The good thing about us is we had opportunity, we availed ourselves of those opportunities, and we can maintain that for a long period of time. Some people come out and they may not be able to sustain a job, that long. So they get fired quickly, or they, lose hope quickly, and then they go back to their old haunts. They go back to what is familiar. So the main thing is, how can we sustain this effort once they get out?
Well, and I know a lot, it's easier said than done, especially first out. Even now, I still have trouble, but I have to have patience with myself. I have to make my brain cells understand that things do not happen overnight. You have to get in there and, like Dennis said, and put in that work. And I haven't. I remember when I was at Hy-Vee and I was just a plain old cashier. Then I worked my way to customer service, and then my HR manager is like, "Hey, we're creating this position. We think you'll be perfect for it. You're the girl. What is it?" It was in HR. So what I was doing was the position was called customer care manager. I don't know why. It was weird because it didn't have nothing to do with customer care. But anyway, so what I would do was train all the new cashiers, make sure everybody's doing their online training and those sort and other little small, HR tasks. Because she was starting to teach me how to do edit the time clock. I was getting ready to learn how to do payroll and just other, things that I could take with me if I did choose to stay at Hy-Vee. You know what I mean? So patience is definitely, especially when you first get out, because you want everything right now. And you're disappointed. So I've seen that happen too. I've seen people get out, come home and think this is supposed to happen quick. And that's not even employment wise. Like, you're not going to get a $20, you have to crawl before you can walk. And it's all because of the choices that I made. Nobody owed me nothing. But once I got in there and proved myself, now you do owe me something. Now it's time for you to start.
And
Because I done been
that's
here 6 months and I done been here on time. You know, my work is always like, you know what I mean? You do owe me something now. So I've had, that's the thing. Like once you get in there and especially with, you know, our situations, once you get in there and let them know you serious, they'll accommodate you.
Yeah.
They'll accommodate you.
I want to climb the ladder too. Yep. For sure.
And that's my mind frame in any job I go to.
Yeah.
I'm never comfortable with staying stagnant. I need to go up. And the management at Hy-Vee was quick because it was that new downtown Hy-Vee. So I don't even think that had been a year they was open. And my HR manager flat out told me, she was like, we've never done this. She was like, and she's been working for Hy-Vee for years. She was like, I've never been an HR person and promoted somebody 2 different positions, actually, because I was a front end manager, like a backup front end manager. So I had a 2-part manager position with them. But I worked hard, and when I got in there, you'd have thought I've been working at Hy-Vee for years. But you know why? Because I watched everybody. I watched what all my front end managers was doing. So when it was time for I knew it. I'm a strategic person. I watch everything. So when it was my time, slid right in. My boss was like, have you been a manager at Hy-Vee before? I'm like, no, I've been watching these guys for 8 months. You know, I've been standing at customer service for 6 months watching my front end people, you know, run it. So now there's some back end stuff they don't tell you about, but you know, you just learn. So definitely been blessed to be able to have the positions, and I'm still finding myself. I'm still trying to find that perfect thing or that perfect job for me. I'm at Broadlawns chilling right now, so doing home health care. You know, Dennis be seeing me. I be seeing you, Dennis. We be seeing each other.
So you've all talked a little bit about support that you've received, that you were very lucky when you left because you had different supports or people that you could reach out to. And I know when we talked earlier in the week, we talked a lot about mentorship. So will you talk a little bit about the supports that you received from your family and friends or from other groups, and maybe from your perspective, the support you received, and then also maybe the support you think people who don't have the family and friends to depend on, what kind of support do you think they need to be successful?
For me, just being there, like them just being there. Like when I first came home, it almost was kind of overwhelming. There was people that knew I was home I hadn't talked to in literally 7.5, almost 8 years. So I didn't even know people knew I was home. I'm at the women's facility. I'm trying to sit in group. And they're like, LaShawn, you got to tell these people they can't. I swear, my first week there, I bet you about 100 people came. And this is not even family. This is people I grew up with, like friends that, you know, it was just kind of overwhelming. But I think them just being there. Financially, I didn't have to worry about nothing. I stayed with my mom when I got out until, you know, and then I came home at the holiday. So that first Thanksgiving, that first Christmas with my family was amazing. It was amazing. So them just being there, knowing that they are 100% in with me throughout this journey I had an uncle that doesn't fool with too many people. And he came down to that facility to see his niece. And I'm telling you, I think that might have been my best moment. He's a family one, but he's not coming to the facility. And for him to come down there, and it wasn't about the money or anything, just his presence, knowing how he is, that was it. I was like, okay. And I just been taking off. I just been going ever since. And I'm not going to stop until they bury me. Whatever is meant for me, it's coming. And it just keeps coming. It keeps coming. I'm just going to keep striving and thriving and be the best me I can be for myself, my family, my employer, whoever's in my life, which is not too many people, which is a good thing. Less noise you have, better off you are.
Right.
But I'm very grateful. For me, it's just them being there, period.
So I would say that, Dennis, did you want to go first? Okay. All right. I would say that before I was released, I was provided with mentors. I also took various little assessments for, what is the name of that thing that we were talking about that day, that assessment for employment? I can't hear you, Dennis. What was it?
CRC, the
Yes.
CRC.
So I did that.
National
and
readiness, something,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So I took the assessment and things of that nature, and I had also got my forklift, thanks to Yvette that is on this video, because I worked at IPI. So it was when I got out, there was mentors for me. I used them a couple of times, but I didn't need them as much, because I had a huge support team. My family was my support team. They
Still are.
no doubt, no doubt. They're always rooting for me and wanting me to do the best. And so they did everything that they could to just make sure I didn't, on top of me, myself, like they didn't do it, but they made sure that I was not going to go back inside of there. So my support was my family. I think school was a big, huge thing for me. School saved me.
I was gonna say, for you, yes. And I only say that because I know you personally, so
Yeah.
it did.
School saved me. And there was, I feel like when I worked for even ISCD, they gave me opportunities. I was a credit counselor. I became certified as a credit counselor, helping my community. They took me around the world. I was traveling and I'm like, I can do this? Like, I'm a felon.
Oh, yeah.
For real? And so those opportunities right there just kind of opened the door for me to say, you know what? The world is endless. I can do whatever it is that I want. And I did that. And I'm doing that. But what I will say, for those people that don't have or can't take the journey that I took, they may need a mentor. If an employer decides they want to hire them, is to check up on their employees and see how they're doing. Because there's a lot of things on the outside that people are going through that you may not know, and then they come to work with it. And now you're kind of looking at like, okay, then they quit or they do whatever. But I think they need that support, the work support. They need to know that they can gain skills on the job.
And be paid accordingly for them.
Yes, yes.
So that's a big thing. That's why I left Hy-Vee. They had me doing all this. I don't mean to overtalk you, but they had me. I'm just going into what you're saying. So they would let me go and work here and train here and learn this and learn that. But you want to pay me $2 an hour? That's what it felt like to me. $2 or $3 an hour. No. If I can run your front end customer service, help in the pharmacy, do this, do that, you guys got to pay me at least 18. That's what I'm worth, at least. Because I didn't just come into the game. You know what I mean? I need at least 18. And so we can't. Well, sorry. Yeah. Got to go somewhere. And I'm at the hospital, less stress. I make the same amount, but I'm less stressed. And I know eventually I will be making what I'm worth. Even if I step out of where I'm at now and go to a different department and want to learn something else, I know there's the tools there and I know I'll get paid for my, you know what I mean? So.
Can I add just one more thing? And I'm going to say kudos to my job, UnityPoint, because how I even got on the board with the Des Moines, Greater Des Moines Partnership, it's like a big shift. They're doing this DEI thing and their diversity and inclusion, and I'm loving every bit of it, right?
No, that's right.
And I got connected because one day I decided I wanted to do this presentation, and I wanted to have people share their culture or whatever and who they were. And that opened the door for me to get on the board. So I'm on the board, and they want to do things for minorities to enhance their skills and things of that nature. So now I get this opportunity to have a mentor, somebody that can help me, because I want to be a leader someday. Well, I feel like I'm a leader anyway, but like, supervise and things. Right. So I want to be a leader, or I just want to develop skills that will just improve me, period. And they have provided that for me. My mentor, like something as small as this, I might get killed, but something as small as me just wanting my own office. She says, hey, okay, if you want your own office, this you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to write you up a proposal, baby. And you're gonna have to show them what and why you want this. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it's just like, if I'm gonna be in that role of leadership, those are the things that I will be doing anyway, writing policies or writing proposals and things of that nature. So I feel like UnityPoint is on their way of helping their employees to gain skills, and also like just grow a great team of people. But you have to give those that have maybe made a mistake, or maybe they've been in trouble 2 or 3 times, but be vulnerable enough to open that door for them, because you never know when it's going to be that time, that point where that person is saying, you know what, I'm ready, because this company has taken the chance on me.
Yep. Because sometimes that's all it takes, is that one company to not give up. Yeah, you've been late a few times. You have a thing for being late. You didn't give up though. They're still giving you your. You know what I mean? You just, because like you said, you on the out. When you come to work, it's Gucci. Like you chilling. But when you go home, God, and people don't know. Woo! There's been some days I was like, oh Lord. So, but yeah, the barriers gets tricky. So,
sorry.
Okay, I would like to speak to the mentorship. I really think we should change the narrative on how we define mentor, because the mentor usually gets this role of giving advice and things like that. My mentors really weren't really good mentors until they became my best friends. Doug Reitgard and Wayne Ford, they were my mentors, but they weren't really my mentors until they became my best friend. And they were able to tell me the things that I didn't want to hear. They were able to do the things that, only your friends can do to you. I was looking at, I think that a mentor should really be a surrogate mother or father to whoever, because the way that you make people successful is you want to treat them like you would treat your kid if they were similarly situated. And that's how you can really be productive, because you really have to put your heart into this. It's all right to give advice, and it's all right to get these titles, but a lot of times these mentors are not fully engaged as they would be, or sometimes as we need them to be. So if they look at it like I was their son, or one of these young ladies were their daughters, I think they would take a different approach to how they would counsel that person. I think they would take a different approach when they get that phone call at 12 o'clock at night. That's an emergency, and even in the employment situations, even as an employer, I think they would be more apt if they looked at you as their daughter or their son to put you on that career path to upper management or whatever that space looks like for that individual.
Right. We have a few questions from the chat that have come up. And since we're talking about mentorships, I'll do that one first. Have any of you been employed, or do you know of employers that do a really good job at providing these kinds of opportunities and mentorships?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I've been blessed. I've been truly blessed. I mean, so Jody Jenner was the former CEO of Broadlawns. And I'm telling you, you would be surprised at the discretion he gave me inside Broadlawns Hospital. You know, I mean, I was able to move into a lot of different spaces. I was able to create, you know, aftercare programs for people that were going through my program that weren't successful. So I was able to create tracking systems where we can, you know, create handoffs. So it'll be a cleaner handoff to the next when they leave my program and go into employment. I mean, there were so many things that, you know, I was invited to upper management meetings and things of that nature. So yeah, Jody Jenner he was really good at what he did, you know, and I give him kudos for that.
I try to be, well, let me not say I try to be. I was like, when I would train, I know it's different from mentorship, but it's kind of not. It's right there on the border of that. So I trained the younger kids for longevity, and there's still some kids that I train that still, there's some adults that I train that still work for Hy-Vee. And the thing, I have a chick, Amanda. She still works downtown. She is I can't remember. She's a manager. I can't remember what department. And every time I go in there, I said, God, you're still here. And she said, you know why? She said, I stayed here because of you.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I stayed here because of you. You didn't BS me around. You was like, listen, these are the pros, these are the cons. The pros for her, obviously, and she's still there. And I think that was, 5 years ago. 5 years ago. So that's one of, you know, that was me mentoring her, you know, listen, pros and cons, they outweigh, stay. If they don't, go find something else. And I just seen her the other day. She's still in there chugging away. But that's how I used to train people, you know, when I would train the kids is, listen, I would attempt to train them longevity. And some of them will listen and do what they're supposed to, and they stayed. You know, like I said, there's still some that still work there, and then there's some that just got caught up in. I had a young man I trained. I'm on the website, being nosy on the Polk County website. There he is. Well, I bump into him, and I said, "Dude, you're a good kid. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What?" I was like, you know what? Seeing you on this Polk County jail website brought tears to my eyes, because I know the type of young man. I know that's not who you are for real. Quit getting caught up. I told you when I trained you, don't get caught up. Don't get caught up.
Well, and that was one of the reoccurring themes of our conversation earlier this week was sometimes we hear from employers that they want to give returning citizens a chance, and then they try one returning citizen, and that's the results of that person is what happens with the program. And what I think a main message we wanted to get across is people are people. Some people are going to be successful. Some people aren't going to be successful, but we shouldn't be blacking out this group just because they have a criminal record.
Right.
Someone's not more likely to be unsuccessful because they have a criminal record. And we just want employers to give everyone a chance.
Yeah, because I'm going on 17 years, and let me tell you something. When did I get out? October 31st of 2005. October 1st of whatever year it is, I celebrate it. I've been celebrating my freedom from day one. I don't care if I'm by myself. I don't care if I got to go have dinner and a couple adult beverages by myself. This is about me. This is the hard work I put in to, you know, stay free for 17 years. And it was hard. I make it seem like it's a walk in the park. Every day it's something. And even still, 17 years later, it's something, because and I take care of my mom. And so, you know, I got to be mindful of taking care of her, trying to balance out jobs. And so but I make it do what it do. Yeah.
We're
Make
happy
it do
for
what
you.
it do.
Yeah, I
Dennis,
got a
what were you-
saying, plant the seed because you never know where it's going to germinate. And,
Yep.
you know, sometimes people, they don't want to nurture that seed long enough. You know, they want to give up on the first chance. And as an employer, because that's the role that I have, I mean, it is really difficult to keep people on because some people fit the stereotype, you know, and they will mess it up for other people. You know, so there's a reason that employers, you know, they get the data and everything that is consistent with what they see, you know, and sometimes when you see a young man come in there, you know he's not ready. So one of the things you have to do is you have to put him on that, you got to put him on that track to get him ready. And for us, it's like, hey, give me 6 months of work.
Yep.
And then come back and apply again, and we'll get you in the program. But with your work history, we can't do it right now. But I try to put them on a path that where they can come back to us and apply.
Resources. Yeah.
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 Resources are that's another thing. I mean, we had a guy, we're in the DMAC phase of the program, and they're cutting off his water and his electricity on the same day, and he's got a child in the house. You know, how can he come to school and participate? You know, it was CIW that helped us. We got, you know, it was Erica. Me and Erica got together. I took him down to general assistance, you know, and had them sign a white sheet, and we were able to help him, and eventually he graduated. So, I mean, people don't understand. There's a lot of things that come, you know, with getting people through these programs and getting them successfully employed.
Well, that's definitely going above and beyond as an employer, and a good example of some of the accommodations that need to be made sometimes. All right, there's another question in the chat. Chelsea says, as a reentry advisor inside the prison, what would you recommend that she can do to prepare people for reentry, especially for their employment needs?
I know some of the resources I had was, and I cannot think of the name of that reentry program I took. It was many moons ago, but literally before I left prison, I had my resume. It wasn't much on it, but I had a resume. You know what I mean? I had a resume. I had, what else did they do? Oh God, I can't remember. Do you remember that program, Felicia?
Is it life skills?
No, but there was it life skills? Oh my God. I think so, because I started it in Mitchellville. I know that.
I do know. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was.
I keep wanting to say
life
STAR,
skill
but it's
program.
not it.
Yeah.
That's the treatment program that was
Program.
there.
Yeah.
Offender
Okay,
workforce development.
Go
ahead, Dennis.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, one of the things that you can do right now is have them start working on getting their license. Their license is going to be very vital to them getting the kind of employment that's going to sustain them. You know, you don't want to be relying on a job that's on a bus route or something like that. So get them prepared to get their license. My thing is have them start building relationships. You have to build relationships with these employers. The relationship's going to be way more important than what you put on that application. Because once somebody starts building that relationship with you, people hire the people they know and trust. So you have to start building that relationship, and that's what's going to get you over that hump. That's what's going to get you that first opportunity or the second opportunity, you know. And then you must make sure that they start working on that support system that they're going to rely on. Because if they're left alone to their own devices, it's going to be an uphill battle. You know, they need to be around people that are on a higher level, because what happens is when you deal with people that are on an upper level, they tend to pull you up. People that are on a lower level tend to pull you down. So it's important that you surround yourself with people that are going to places or are at places that you're trying to get to.
So can I just intervene is just to say this is that I'm a therapist and sometimes, people's way of thinking isn't always right. And so I think as an advocate or someone that has the skills is trying to really change a person's way of thinking. Because if my thinking is that like, oh, and nobody's going to give me a chance, or, it's the end, of course, I'm going to come out and I'm probably going to do the same exact thing or whatever, So I just think too, that's part of preparation as well, is getting people to change the way they think about their life, their situation. That's huge.
Where
And
it
then,
starts at.
yeah, and then just creating this plan, like you said, is just like when my patients are suicidal, I have to have them create a plan. So if they become that way, what are they going to do to cope? Who are they going to call? Things like that. So like creating a master plan before you walk up out of there, and making sure if you have people on that support team that they're willing to do that and help you. But you got to be willing to help yourself. You can't just allow people to think other people is just going to help you, because they're not. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you standing alone, and so you got to put in your work and just know that people are out there and they want to help you, but you gotta do your part.
All right, we have one more question from the chat. Do you feel that promotion is more difficult for formerly incarcerated individuals? And what advice would you give to support staff and other returning citizens on this topic?
I didn't have any problems with promotion, but again, mine was not like, you know what I mean? But it was weird because here I am with this robbery on my record, but I'm in Hy-Vee safe with all this money. Granted, my mind's not thinking, oh, let me, snatch this safe, that wasn't, but it was just weird. So I didn't have any problems. But I'm sure if I was in a different job or whatever, there's going to be some barriers with that. There's going to be, so 9 times out of 10, I'm going to have to go extra harder in the paint. I don't even care if I had a degree or certificate in that field. I still think if they see my background, you know what I mean? It's always judgment, always. So I think it depends on the field you're in. But I would say we probably would have to go a little bit harder, even with credentials.
One of the things about being promoted is you have to have people in your company that are your sponsors. So if you don't have a sponsor, if you don't have somebody going to those major meetings where promotions are decided that got your name in their mouth, then it's going to be almost impossible for you to get promoted. So that happens by building relationships within inside that institution or inside that company. It's important that people understand the importance of having sponsors. There's certain people, that you work with that are your friends. They are not your sponsors. It might be your direct report. They're not your sponsors. Your sponsor is that person who has power within inside the company that make decisions on that promotion day, or they're the ones that say something about you positive. And once you create those relationships, it's going to expedite your potential to get promoted.
That's true. And I had that too. I had my HR manager when I was at Hy-Vee. She was Team Lashon people was like, and when once you do that, like you start moving so quick up in them positions, everybody's like, oh, how does she? No, boo. I don't kiss nobody's nothing. What happened was, ain't nobody gonna stand out but me for me. So yep. I stood out over everybody. I worked hard in the paint. I was putting in that work, doing it. They seen that and they was like, oh, okay, well, I know she's been here, maybe a year more than her. But LaShawn's going hard in the paint. Like she's going above and beyond this, that, and the third. So I ain't got to step on I don't step on toes and none of that. I'm just seen. And I got the gift of gab. We know that. That's my number one weapon. I do have the gift of gab. I'm going to talk you into hiring me one way or another. I'm going to talk you into giving me a chance so I can get, like you said, build that relationship or that rapport. And then I'm going to just go in and do the work I told you I was going to do. And bam, look at me. I'm the CEO or something one of these days, so there's that.
All right. So I'm going to do a quick summary of the main points that I heard today from this discussion. But while I'm I want to give you, oh yeah, go ahead first, Felicia.
Can I just say one thing before I close out? I had a little statement that I have to say to you guys. Is just this, and I wrote it down, but I have to say this, is that the things that I want this audience to know is to do away with judgments, because you could be seconds away from being on the other side. And the difference between you and I got caught and you didn't. The question I would like for you to ponder on is, if it were you who committed a crime and you knew that you wanted to do better, be better, and a productive member of society, would you want an employer to take a chance on you? And that's my question.
Ooh, say that with your chest out, baby. Say it with your chest out, honey, because that's the bottom line. And I think that's where it's getting tricky. Nobody wants to, no, you don't want to be put in the shoes, but put yourself in them shoes. That's the $1 million point right there, my friend.
I agree. And Chelsea, I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. One way to create buy-in for employers is have them put themselves in other people's shoes. I mean, truth be told, 1 in 3 Americans have some sort of a criminal record. So all of us know people who have a criminal record. And do we treat the people that we know with a criminal record the same as this like stigma thing of other people who have criminal records? And so that's something to think about. So I'm going to go over the last points of what I heard come out today, but I want to give each of you, Felicia, Dennis, and LaShawn, a chance to think up one last closing piece of advice or something you didn't get a chance to say yet. Feel free to come up with that while I'm going through, and maybe the things I say will bring something up for you. But what I heard in this conversation today is that assumptions are an issue on both sides. On the employer's side, assuming about people with criminal records, but also then people with criminal records assuming what careers they can get into, not get into, where they'll be judged. Like, are people screening themselves out? And are we educating on both sides so that the communication is there and it's not just people saying no without really knowing the situation? The second thing I heard a lot today was communication with employers. I've heard about different cases here where the employer really went to bat for you, or where the employer helped you in your next step, or where the employer let you go to an appointment that you needed. And all of that was really because you all had good communication with your employer. And so in some cases, I think it's harder for people to communicate with their employer, or maybe their employer does not make it easy to communicate with them. So that was another major point I heard. And then another one I heard was really, and this is something I think for most of us on the call who support people with criminal histories, is that roadmap of how to get somewhere. Because whether that roadmap includes education or it doesn't, how do people move through the different careers? Because you all started at the bottom and kept working your way up. How do you move through those careers and get where you want to go? And how do you find the connections that you need? How do you know that you could qualify for HUD, or that maybe HERDA has a special transportation program? You know, how do people know that? So really the roadmap and plans for what to do. All right, so I hope I gave you enough time. LaShawn, do you want to give one last closing comment?
For me, it's just let's get into these outdated policies and things, because the bottom line is I've been home all these years. So obviously I'm cool on that side of the fence. I'm cool on this side of the fence. Don't plan on going back. You never say never, because that's how things get tricky. But just be open, and there are people like me out there. You have your repeat offenders and you have your success stories. And I pride myself in not being a statistic. I am very much a victor, as I love to call myself, on a daily basis. So just be mindful of our needs, and if you get the bad seed, I mean, life happens. That's like in dating, relation, anything. There's always going to be a bad seed somewhere at some point. But you can't keep everybody in that has a background or a record in this closed box. That's not fair. That's not fair to us, because there are people out there like us that go hard in the paint for the mere fact that we know we are felons, and we have to work 10 times harder sometimes to prove that, we're here to stay, or we have longevity, or whatever the case, may be. And just keep an open mind.
Thank you. Dennis, do you have last comments?
Yeah, I would like to just say that once again, I thank all the employers that are here. I want to also give a shout out to all the advocates that came and witnessed this. All relationships are exchanges, and it's important no matter what side you're on and no matter what relationship you're in, it's an exchange. And when that relationship ceases to be fair, it will dissolve. So, I mean, if we make a conscious effort to go out and give opportunities to people, like I said, I'm a poster child for opportunity. It wasn't that I was any better than anybody. I have a lot of peers that were way smarter than me. There were more peers that were more athletic than I was, but I had opportunity. And I had people in my life that wanted to see me go further. So it's more important that people get opportunities. And once you get that opportunity, it's prevalent that you do all you can to make sure that you're not the reason that an employer doesn't hire anybody else.
Felicia, do you still have a closing comment? I was wanting to give you the chance to do that so bad.
I don't know. I guess, it's just a tricky thing. And it's scary sometimes to want to hire somebody that has a background, but understand that those people have paid their debt to society. And
Yes.
how long are you going to penalize those that are really trying to make an honest living and take care of themselves and their families? So, I just say is that, like, if you're sitting on this panel, you want to make a difference, you know what to do. Be vulnerable, trust the process, and start hiring those that need it.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised on what you get. You pick me and the Felicias of the world, then, you might get about 10 LaShawns and Felicias. You might get about 10, 11,
okay,
20
we can't leave Dennis out, okay?
Dennis Dennis got the things going on.
Well, I really want to I just shared my screen. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I can't talk and share at the same time, so I shared it a little early. I really want to thank our panelists today for being on this presentation and sharing your stories. It's really impactful to hear from people who have been through the system and who are on the other side and being successful. And thank you again for being here. I'm going to give a short presentation on some things that I think employers could do. Panelists, you're welcome to stay on and add any commentary as we go through. Since I had to share my screen, I'm not as good at looking in the chat, so please feel free to keep putting things in chat. But if someone has a question along the way, please feel free to come off mute and let me know your question, because I'm not going to see the chat as well. So today we talked a lot about this, and I don't think I really have to go in deep. I think all three, LaShawn, Felicia, and Dennis all said something along these lines. If you think back to a time in your life when you made a decision that you aren't proud of and don't like to remember, how do you feel when you think of that moment? What reactions do you have in your body? And then now imagine that you have to think about that every time you have a job interview or trying to rent an apartment or filling out an application. And I think that just helps us get in the right mind space as employers for how a person might feel when they're coming in to apply with a criminal history, knowing that they have to talk about a point in time in their life that they don't like to talk about. And that, so why should employers care? Why about this issue? Why should employers want to hire returning citizens? Well, according to Iowa Workforce Development, returning citizens are the second largest work-ready pool of employees in the state. Around 3,000 individuals are released from prison per year in Iowa. So it's a huge pool of individuals. And if we just block them right out, then we're blocking out a lot of talent. Most returning citizens are required to work as a condition of their parole. Employment has been shown as an important factor in lowering recidivism rates, which means if we lower recidivism rates, we're lowering crime that's being committed, and it's better for our whole community. And then, like I said earlier, 1 in 3 American adults has a criminal history. So that's a third of our population. If we're automatically closing out a third of the population, think of all the skills and talent that's being wasted. And why is this a problem in the United States? Well, in the United States, we have 5% of the world's total population, but 25% of the incarcerated population. So we incarcerate people in the United States at a much higher rate than other countries around the world. And this really changed in the 90s. In the 1970s, there were about 275,000 people incarcerated. And today we're up to 2 million people that are under supervision. And it was really because in the 90s, there were 3 big things that happened. The war on drugs, there was the Sentencing Act, like 3 strikes rule, and I'm not going to think of the third thing right now. There were 3 big political things that happened that basically incarcerated more people and for longer times. Oh, harsher sentences. There was a law that came that made sentencing longer. And so really we've just started incarcerating people more and more, to the point where now 95% of individuals that are incarcerated are released back out into the community. So if you look back in the 70s, there were more serious crimes and it wasn't the same amount of people. So you might not encounter people who had a criminal history. Now you are definitely going to encounter people that have a criminal history. They're coming back to the community. In Iowa, most people that are incarcerated are released within 5 years. And if a person has completed their sentence, should they still be punished afterwards? Is it fair that a criminal history is affecting where a person can live, what things they can study, if they can go into their children's school, what jobs they can find? If we're putting these barriers and blocks in front of people, then is their sentence really over, or is it continuing? Another thing that I think it's important for us to think of as a community is that 70% of children with a parent incarcerated will follow in their parents' footsteps. And that's not a cycle that we want to see. So we want to make sure that people who have a criminal history are able to find quality jobs and are able to support their children and get their children back, because those relationships are what create successful children in the future. And we don't want to just keep on perpetuating the same cycles. Also, if we look at the system of incarceration, it is not equitable across racial lines. Black adults in Iowa are imprisoned at nearly 11 times the rate of white adults. And this chart shows some other races as well, but it is definitely not equitable and another thing that needs to be addressed. And also, this is just a chart that talks a little bit about mental health. This is self-reported and really shows that we are using the incarceration system right now as kind of our solution to mental health. It's not really a solution. We're just incarcerating people and not helping deal with root causes. So is incarceration the best solution, or is there another way that we could use that money and support individuals who have mental health issues? So to go on to the positive thing, there are many resources out there that show how good of workers that people that are returning from incarceration really can be. I think there's a stigma out there that that they don't want to work, or they don't want, like, that's why we're not hiring people. They don't want to work. They're lazy. They're sitting on the couch. That's not true. We have 3 great examples today of people that have talked so much about the hustle and how hard it is and how hard they've tried and how grateful they are for opportunities that they received. And so these are a few resources that I'm willing to send this PowerPoint out to anybody who's wondering, but these are really some resources to help attract individuals to your workplace and make sure that you're not closing people out before they ever get a chance to prove themselves. There's also a guide that we have that talks about hiring. Hiring is just one of those points in the employment process where people either self-select out or employers select people out without really ever giving them a chance. So there's a lot of focus put on the hiring piece just for that very reason. So one suggestion is removing the checkbox on the application. If you're asking about criminal history before someone even applies, there is a large group of people that just won't even try because they think that they won't be able to get the job because of the criminal history. And they don't think it's worth the effort of going through the whole conversation and dragging it all up when they're going to be blacked out right at the application stage. You can include a statement on the application form. Criminal records do not automatically disqualify an applicant. That would help. As an employer, talk openly about it in the community. I'm sure you've heard of a few different places here that hire people with a criminal record, and all of us in the back of our head are like, oh, good, that's a great place for people to apply. So as an employer, going out there and saying that you do hire people with a criminal record is a good way. Training human resources staff and hiring managers on making fair decisions is important. And there are many different models of this out there. In some cases, there's HR that does the interview, and whether a person has a criminal history never moves beyond that. And so there is no stigma with the hiring manager or coworkers because they don't know. There are other models where people are very open about it and everybody knows. There are models where nobody knows, not even HR. There are many different models out there. So it's really just taking the time to be intentional about this process and figuring out what it is you really want your company to look for. And then I think the other one I really will pull out is using a reliable background check provider. And I know Dennis and Felicia and LaShawn, we talked about this on our conversation as well. Some employers will really just pull up Iowa courts online and look at that and interpret that how they will. And some even background checks will come back and they will count things that were dismissed or expunged. And so unless you really understand a background check, you need to hire a company that can specifically tell you what the background check means if that person was actually convicted, because things will show up on the background check. Arrests will show up that maybe didn't even happen. I mean, that nothing happened from. So basically just really understanding the background check and then thinking about if those backgrounds that come up really make a difference. So in the past, a lot of employers have said, anything that happened in the past 7 years is a disqualifier. Well, that's blocking out a lot of people. So instead, if you're very specific, and maybe it's, you know, if you're a driving company, you need a driver, maybe that's the DUI, maybe that's the correlation. You don't need to black out every single crime for every single job. And then we talked a little bit today, but really as an employer, how you can be helpful, the things that you can do for returning citizens are oftentimes the same things you can do for all of the rest of your employees to make it a better place to work. We talked about transportation. Have you considered your location for how you're getting people to work? And we can't all just move our location next to the DART bus line, but are there other things you can do? I've heard of employers that have an Uber account. And so when someone's car breaks down, they call the company's Uber and they're able to get to work. And that's probably worth it for many employers to pay the $5, $10 to get someone to work so that you have your employee for that day. and it just helps people to be more reliable. People also have started ride-shared programs within the company and created carpools. Some companies buy vans and pick people up. Also, a big one, I would say, especially when people are first released, if you do not need to require a driver's license for the job, don't require a driver's license, because that's something that is hard for a lot of people when they're first released. There are processes that people need to go through. So you are definitely blocking people out if you're requiring a driver's license and that person does not need to drive for the job. Another place where you could be helpful is if there are specific uniforms or supplies that are needed for the job. Many people, when they're first released from incarceration, do not have a lot of money when they are released, and a lot of employers will reimburse for things, but that is not helpful to someone who does not have the $100 to get the work boots right away. So if someone needs something for work, needs to have a specific supply, if you can either provide that for them, or we've seen companies that have a supply library, and so they have things that people can borrow until they're able to go purchase their own. And another big one is flexibility. This has come up even more after COVID, but not all employers can offer work from home, but that all employers can find a way to give more control to their employees, whether it's some sort of software to help people swap shifts during work, or whether it is having schedules that allow people to have a day off during the week so that they can make it to appointments, offering days off. Those are the types of things that you really should be looking at so that people can work for you and also be able to do the things that they need to do. So Shelley, this is the part I was talking about. There's a lot of resources out there for employers. Job developers are anyone in the community that helps other people find work. And there are many in central Iowa. There's many all across Iowa. These types of organizations are very helpful if you as an employer don't have the time to figure out transportation, housing, all of those types of things, mentoring, helping people create a path. Creating a relationship with a job developer is a great way to do that. And these are mostly nonprofits and mostly will not cost an employer anything to work with. So it's a great resource for employers. Shelley, do you want to talk about federal bonding?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amber. So federal bonding program is basically a business insurance policy through the Department of Labor, and it's a bond that can be issued to the employer to mitigate some risk in hiring a job seeker with significant barriers to employment. So it's completely free. There's no red tape. The employer just calls me. We issue it over the phone, and they'll get the bond in about 10 days in the mail. So it's a good program to try and get those individuals that have been out of the workforce for a long period of time, or also those that are returning to the community after a period of incarceration, kind of back into the workforce and giving them, I think Dennis had mentioned, a good reason to hire this person versus someone who maybe doesn't have those barriers. And the Work Opportunity Tax Program, that's called WOTC for short. It's a federal tax credit that employers can reduce some of the tax liability if they hire, again, job seekers with significant barriers to employment. There's many target groups on that one, and lots of ways to qualify. So the one specifically for the population we're talking about today is titled ex-felon, and it is a credit that can be claimed for an employer when they hire someone who has been convicted of a felony in the last 12 months, or they've been released from incarceration on a felony conviction in the last 12 months. Even if someone's spent some time incarcerated, when they get out, that 12 months starts kind of the clockwork on that, and they can be certified under the WOTC tax credit through the employer. The third one that we kind of talk about is a state level tax credit. So it's basically, again, a way for the employer to reduce some of that tax liability at the end of the year. They just check a box on their forms when they file their business taxes, and they can deduct up to 65% of that person's wages in 12 months. So that can also be carried over if someone starts working for them in June and qualifies as an ex-offender, then they can carry it into June of the following year to get that full 12 months. And for that credit, you don't, the person person doesn't have to have a felony conviction. There's many ways to qualify as an ex-offender. It could be someone who's living in a workplace facility, someone who's on probation, which is that community supervision they mentioned earlier. Could be someone that has any conviction in Iowa above a simple misdemeanor, which is kind of the lowest offense in our state, so serious misdemeanor or above. And of course, someone who is incarcerated or coming out of incarceration. So lots of ways to qualify for that one too. I kind of put my email address or phone number there in the chat as you work with employers, as you're working with men and women that are returning to the community out of incarceration, or even those, you know, young adults that may be on supervision in the community that are struggling with employment or where they can turn for reentry resources or what programs they're eligible for. Then I could also be a good contact to help with that population as well.
Thank you very much, Shelley. And so then the other two resources that I put up here are just for people who are really interested in this issue and want to be part of the community conversation. There is an opportunity reentry task force that convenes, and it's truly a community group that decides goals together. They identify some barrier that's in the community around reentry, and then they work together to get rid of that barrier. If you're interested in joining that group, you can reach out to Luke Lynch, and that's here in Central Iowa. Currently, we still meet on Zoom on Wednesday afternoons, once a month, third Wednesday of the month. And then lastly, I just wanted to let people know that Pell has been reinstated for people with criminal histories, and Pell will be allowed to be back in the prisons. So Felicia today talked a lot about education. That opportunity is coming back where people will be able to do more education while they're incarcerated. So I wanted to make sure that people on this call are aware of that. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Jenny at DMAC. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I just really want to thank everybody for everything that you have been doing today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Felicia and Dennis and LaShawn for sharing your stories with us. And I really hope that everybody is able to take one action step away from what we did today and do that in your communities. So lastly, are there any questions before we close? Stephen, are the statutes shared generally national or state? Are there significant differences in Iowa versus the US? The ones I shared are national. Iowa is always just a little bit better. I mean, it's not that much different, but Iowa, like 95% return home in the United States. Iowa sometimes gets up to 97%, for example. All right.
Can you send me all this information to my email address?
Is that LaShawn? Yes, I can.
Yes, because I definitely would be. I'm sorry, I'm on my way to work because, of course, and the show doesn't stop. So it does not stop.
Yes. Anyone who wants the resource, please feel free to reach out and I will send it. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.